From chaos to order, implementing effective business systems. In this episode, John Tonkin from Brain in a Box explores the importance of systems in business and how they should capture expertise, enhance consistency, and drive improvements. You'll learn about the challenges and benefits, including the role technology plays in modern businesses. Perfect for entrepreneurs looking to scale or strategize for an exit. I'm your co-host, Anthony Pearl, and this is the Systems from the Box podcast. Let's start unpacking. John, let me ask you a leading question here. Why do businesses need systems?
Very simply, I'm going to start by saying, what would a business be like without systems, if there could be such a thing? Business without systems means people hopefully working in some way a little bit together and trying to achieve the same aim. Without systems totally means that they wouldn't even know what they were doing, where they were going, what they were getting to put together to make their business work. So we need to recognize that having systems starts with the point of saying, well, we know what we create, we know what we do, what benefit we add to the raw product or whatever it is we're starting with, and what the client wants to buy. What we're going to be very careful to do is to make sure that we have that happening in a form that the client sees the value in and that everyone can see coming together in a real way there. So systems really, why does every business need systems? So we can capture that. Remember, when we go into business, we have the expertise and we think, I'm good at this. I can make money out of this. So now what we're doing is to say, good, you could make money out of it. Do you want someone to help you? Because if you want somebody to help you, they need to know how to do it too. And the best way to capture that knowledge and that expertise that you bring is to put it all into your systems. So if you think about it, systems is simply the shorthand for capturing all your expertise. You put your expertise into your systems and then you can share it around. And it's as basic as that. Why does every business need systems? Because you want your business to work at its best. You want to capture the expertise and make sure that it's available to all the people in your business now and those who will follow.
And it's an important idea that because you want consistency in what you're delivering, and when you've got consistency, you can then find tweaks to improve it, can't you? Because it's about creating efficiencies and providing an opportunity to improve.
Exactly. This is why we focus so much on the visual version of our systems, because having it visual means somebody can point to something and say, we're doing it here. Why don't we do that step back there? We could do it much earlier and it wouldn't change anything. Why are we doing that? And so by looking at it, by being able to see what you're doing, again, flowcharts make this so easy. You can then go in and make sure that your systems are doing what they're supposed to do. And if they're not, you can look for the place in the systems where it isn't doing what it's supposed to do. And that's the bit where you're going to say, well, what can we do more effectively? And you can have multiple people looking at exactly the same thing at the same time and working it out together. So you bring other people's brains in, you collaborate on that, and you make an improvement. And it's hard to do that when you don't have anything recorded. If it's all in our head, I can't sort of literally say, hey, have a look in my head and tell me what I'm doing. Tell me how I can do it better. You can't do that. Or having somebody perform their process without having it recorded means somebody has to watch everything, remember it all, and then work out where their improvements could be and then explain it so that the doer understands that. Very difficult to do.
It goes back to that idea, doesn't it? You don't know what you don't know. And often people have got things that are in their head that they just think, oh, this is obvious, but it's not necessarily obvious to the next person. And it may not be obvious to the business overall, who may not be aware that this is going on and could say, well, actually, I know you're doing this and this is automatic, but there might be a better way of doing it.
Yep. I mean, you look at the year 2000. Remember the year 2000, all the fluff and carry on about that. Now, it didn't have a major impact on so many businesses, but it did on some. But everything worked before then, and COBOL, which was the basis of most business software, big heavy stuff, it was written by the people who wrote it. Things the way they are because they got that way. And very simply, they hadn't allowed for the extra 2 digits. It's something so basic. So imagine if we hadn't found that improvement. Planes didn't fall out of the sky and all the things that people predicted, but there would have been some of those things in business. If we think of a parallel, if we don't correct for this, this will happen. Think about just something basic, like what was it, CrowdStrike recently, where we had a software update, something they did all the time, every month or every quarter, whatever it was. And this one, someone didn't check this little thing, this one little bit of code, and it brought down lots of businesses all over the place. It was hard work putting it back together again and recapturing everybody's faith and trust in that bit of software. So we're looking at that. It is always a matter of keeping it up to date, and having systems visual in front of you is such an easy way of doing that.
Yeah, and I think the important part that you mentioned there as well is also a backup when things might go astray. And there's all sorts of reasons why that might happen. I mean, technology is a good example of that, where you introduce a new bit of technology and what you don't realize is it might not be backwardly compatible with something else that you've got sitting in the background.
That's for sure. There are so many people who, and certainly as we get more integrated, they have this bit of software links to that bit of software. And then I now changed that bit of software, but I forgot I've got a Zap that's going between those, or I've got an integration between them that now doesn't work. And then I try to integrate that change into the first bit of software, and no, that won't work there. You can come undone very quickly. Is good to make sure you have that backup and have everything sorted out, and to do some analysis, give it a trial run before we go wild, and so on.
I'm interested, John. I mean, how, you're dealing with a lot of people in a business, and obviously different sizes of businesses, but when you move aside from the owner of the business and you look at the other people involved, how protective do they tend to get? And how do you overcome that of saying, I don't want to give away my little bit of value that I have in the business?
I've worked with extremes in there. I worked with one company where the one person whose expertise we were relying upon to capture these couple of processes had worked as a consultant with supporting people in Microsoft as a matter of interest. And that's nothing to do with the conversation, but she was very reluctant to share anything. And she'd say, I suppose you already know that. And lots of little throwaway comments that denigrated anything else but her knowing what it was. And it was really quite difficult to work with. Incidentally, she wasn't with the company for a lot longer. But it was a matter of trying to let her or help her understand that you look better by having other people follow your systems because they work well. And that's what we're generally aiming for. Most people I work with may start off having a little bit of hesitation about, but what's he going to do? They're going to take it away from me. But when they realize that they're working with me and with the team to capture their systems, everyone knows where the expertise came from. And often you'll get this case where, I didn't realize you did that, Marianne, or Bill, or whoever it is, and so on. And you get that recognition. Shared recognition comes with sharing that expertise. And so there's usually a very strong benefit in sharing that everyone experiences. And it's a wonderful thing to see, because people say, oh yeah, Jim showed us how he does this and it's really good. It makes it so much faster. You get to have, in effect, your little brand goes around, made by me, made by Jim, and so on. And people love to see their name in lights.
And I think it's also important, isn't it, that people get a better sense of understanding of what everything else is going on in the business, because you might have a general overview that, okay, we start off with this and my little role is here and ultimately we produce X at the end. But understanding how everything combines and connects together and including all the team in that can in itself be quite a rewarding exercise.
Yeah. Including, as what I generally say is, look, we want as many people as the table as can earn their place at the table. So we don't want anyone working with us, if you like, when we're capturing a process or something, capturing their systems. We don't want somebody who's sitting there and just going to be occupying a seat but not contributing. But anyone who can contribute is going to have a good idea. Sometimes people who are not even in the area we're focusing on will come up with something where they'll just say something like, guys, why don't you do this? And we listen to it, and then that's a good idea. Not all good ideas come from focusing too closely on what we're doing. It's a bit like saying you have one person, you get one idea. Two people have three ideas. And we want to capture that thing all the way through. So we always try to work with the people who hold the knowledge, people who hold the expertise, and capture it from them, particularly because they also know the things that go wrong with it. And that's what we want to protect the business from by knowing what can go wrong, the risks. We want to now build them out of the process. So it's a critical component.
And when you talk about that, that is an idea also for owners of businesses who usually are the ones that start the business, have been intimately involved in all the steps of the way. Often business owners are reluctant to let go of pieces of the puzzle, and
Yeah.
the systems allow them to step away, but still have control because they've got an overview of what's going on and understand it. Hey, John, I just want to take a break from the main part of the podcast for a moment so you can tell us a little bit more about Brain in a Box.
So Brain in a Box the idea started when I was working in corporate. I was working in a couple of major companies, internationals, and I decided that when I went out and started my first business in 2000, that it was going to use the same principles as I had done in corporate world to capture systems and to make them accessible to the team. But I thought, I've got to be able to do this for small business, small to medium business. And that's what we focus on. So we work with the business owner, with the team, to capture what the business does, and then to minimize the risk by going through and looking at all the risks that we have to manage, make sure we capture those and manage them effectively, and also to achieve the benefit. And then we make all that accessible to the team via an intranet. So that's effectively what it is. You do get a certain amount of pride when you've built something up, and everyone has that. And what we're trying to do is to make it so that we can capture that pride and share the pride as well. So the pride isn't about holding on, the pride can be about sharing. And so we do want to make sure that we bring everyone in. The business owner is there. They will benefit by having a business that is going to work more efficiently, more effectively, and produce the things that their customers want. So, there's always that benefit in having people working with it, with the business owner as well, capturing those things in there.
And ultimately, of course, as well, that once you've got these systems and you've got a business owner who is able to remove himself from the systems, it opens up opportunities not only for the business to scale on one side, but also potentially as an exit strategy at some point.
That's right. And that relates to that. I have a saying, we've got a lot of little sayings we use, and one of them is only you can do what only you know how to do. Very simply, if you're the only person who knows how to do this, you better get used to it because they're going to be coming to you all the time. And that's, again, often if the business owner is one of those people who wants to hang on to the things they're known for or the things they're clever at, they're going to have to be there all the time and they can't pull back. So they get towards the end of their time in the business and they think, well, I hate this. I've got to do everything. Well, yep, you made it work that way. So, sharing means that you frees you up to find the other areas of the business where you can now expand or grow or refine the business and so on. So definitely letting go of the business things as the business owner, all the business systems, means that your team can then start to shine too. And so often you'll find that they have ideas which will improve your own.
That's got to be one of the most important parts of this process, isn't it? When you're going through it, is looking at areas where you can improve and making judgment calls as to whether you need different resources, technology, any number of different things that you might bring into the case. This would be quite a revealing process for businesses.
It is. And it's interesting because it's easy sometimes to see things which will likely be an improvement. And that's where it's so important so before we start working on any process, the first thing we do is to say, what are the things that could go wrong or have gone wrong in the past with this process? What are the risks? And we write them all down. And then we look at the benefits. If this was working perfectly, how would it help us, the business, and so on? And it's the same thing when somebody says, wow, I can improve it by changing that. It's very easy to sort of say, oh, yeah, let's do that. But again, we know that that is not always going to be the best thing to do. So as long as we acknowledge the input, we want to encourage people to find those changes in there, but we also want to say, that's fantastic. I would love you to come along and we'll analyze that change and see how it'll work. Because if it can work, that could save us a lot of time. So by doing that, I'm still acknowledging the input and the initiative shown by that worker or that team member, but we're still going to go through and analyze it carefully rather than just go with what could be a perfectly good sounding idea that creates a terrible outcome. So it's really important to do that.
I just wanted to touch lastly on this idea, and I know it's something we're going to explore in future episodes of the podcast, the role of technology, because immediately people are thinking about, technology always means improvements, doesn't always, can create new jobs in the business and just replace one job with another to manage the technology. But how much is technology playing a role these days when you start going into businesses and talking about systems?
If we think of technology in terms of physical technology, like machines and things like that, there's a lot of refinement in machines. So that makes things faster and more efficient and more repeatable. And, you get better tolerances and all the rest of those things from the engineering side, if you like. But then if we look at now the machines and things that make the business work, we're talking about software applications and things like that. And there are so many of those. Before, you would buy a big tool, like you might have bought, going back many years, Lotus 1, 2, 3, and you had something else, another thing for word processing and so on. And if you look at that, you tried to do everything in there, and then you realized it didn't work. So then we had the rise of SAP and other ERP systems, enterprise resource planning systems, which meant that we could now do very complex things over a big organization and do that. It's hard to bring those great, big, heavy things down into a small business or a medium-sized business effectively. And so that was answered by there being lots of small software applications which do much of the functions that you would get out of SAP or Oracle and all the other things up there. So this is where we now have the benefit of having tons of software, and we now have the terror of having tons of software. So, it's great to have all those software apps out there, but every day you go and talk to different people every day, and everyone has a best way of doing this or a best piece of software that'll do that. Oh, I downloaded this tool the other day and it does this really well. Great. And then you're looking at the standard things: time, cost, quality. How will it help the business in terms of those three things? And then you've got to really work on a standard tech stack. So the idea is you bring on something else, it's either displacing something or it's additional or it's brand new. And if it's brand new, you need to be really clear that it's going to have the result you want it to. If it's going to replace something, make sure that it integrates with everything else and that it does really achieve a better result. It's all those things in there. And it makes it a bit harder, in effect, because anyone going through thinks, I'm going to have to invest time and effort and money in creating this system which works on that bit of software. But I've just heard that there's another bit of software that may work better. So now will I invest my time and effort in doing it here, or will I check that? There are more question marks in the world now than there are full stops. It's a matter of actually having to look at it and analyze first without getting so bogged down with analysis that you can't operate.
Yeah, and when you talk about technology like that, we live in a world where we've become used to, we've got to grab the next thing. And it's like, well, do I buy my phone now? Or I know there's a new release that's coming out in 3 months' time. Do I wait for that? We're all guilty of doing that. And then what happens is you just remain stationary, don't you? It's you have to draw the line in the sand
You
when it
do.
comes to technology.
Yeah. And that's the other side. You can get caught up with either momentum. In other words, we just keep on rolling along. So I buy my new iPhone every year and so on and so on. Or we get caught up with inertia. No, I'm just going to stay here because this works safe. This works. I'm here and everything's fine at the moment. And when you come right down to it, one of the things I say often to a business owner is, look, because they say, should we do this? Should we do that? And I say, look, let's look at it. Everything works on paper. I'm not saying that we want it to work on paper, but every business did work on paper before. Some places still have a lot of things happening on paper. Now, we don't want to end up on paper. I don't. No one else does either. But what we want to do is to be very careful what we elevate above the paper. So if I'm here and I've got something that works perfectly on paper, it shouldn't just be, well, here's some technology, quickly apply it and it'll be okay, because it may not be. It's a matter of saying, all right, if I do this, what does that paper link to next, and so on, if we were to follow that idea. But we want to make sure that we think about it carefully, because every new bit of software is a new bit of money taken out of our account every month as well. So we've got to want to get that integration. We want to get even just terminology. You buy an American bit of software and it speaks American English. Buy a German piece of software and it'll speak English probably as well, but it may not be quite the way you want it. And different terminology, the way they use customer or client, all the little things that come into play that we want to make sure match our business. So the critical thing for any technology and anything to do with systems is making sure that my business is what I built, and I want things that will help my business, not things that I'm not buying a software and then seeing if my business will help that, and so on. So we've got to keep the right focus in there.
Before you go, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're tuned in. Try to stay again. Before you go, don't forget to hit subscribe. Before you go, don't forget to hit subscribe on whatever platform you're tuned to. I'm seeing Jamie out of the corner of my eye. That's thrown me as well. Before you go, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're tuned to. Thank you for listening to the Systems from the Box podcast featuring John Tonkin from Brain in a Box. Details on how to contact John and his team are in the show notes, along with other valuable links you don't want to miss. This podcast is produced by Podcast Done For You. I'm Anthony Pearl. We look forward to your company on the next episode.